Imagine waking up to find the skies over the Middle East completely frozen. Commercial flights instantly grounded in Dubai. The world's most vital oil trade routes suddenly halted, and in the heart of Tehran, a highly secure government compound irrevocably altered, marking the sudden end of Iran's supreme leader. In a matter of minutes, a decades-long shadow war between the US, Israel, and Iran broke wide open. How did we get here? And what happens next? This is exactly how the most unprecedented military operation in modern history unfolded. The assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei explained. It's just after 6 a.m. in Israel. A squadron of fighter jets, armed with long-range high-precision technology, lifts off into the dawn sky. Their target is over 1,000 miles away. According to intelligence from the CIA and Israeli operatives, a secret meeting is underway. A huge portion of Iran's top leadership, including the most powerful man in the country, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has gathered at a secure compound in the heart of Tehran. A short time later, the early morning quiet of the Iranian capital is shattered. The compound is hit with incredible precision. In a matter of seconds, the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East is changed forever. This is the story of how an unprecedented Israeli and US operation unfolded, the sudden collapse of Iran's leadership, and the chaotic regional fallout that followed. By the time you watch this, new details may have emerged. To understand how we got here, we have to go back. The United States, Israel, and Iran share a long, tense history. Until 1979, Iran was a monarchy ruled by Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, an ally of the United States. But the Islamic Revolution changed everything. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei took power, transforming Iran into a strict Islamic republic. The old pro-Western stance was gone. The US and Israel became sworn enemies. For decades, tensions just simmered. Economic sanctions squeezed the Iranian economy, while Tehran funded proxy groups across the region. But the real heart of this modern crisis is all about nuclear ambitions. After undisclosed uranium enrichment sites were discovered, a fierce diplomatic and covert struggle began. The 2015 nuclear deal brought a temporary freeze, but that relief was short-lived. In 2018, the US pulled out of the agreement, and the entire diplomatic landscape shifted. Since then, relations have steadily deteriorated. In 2025, with negotiations completely stalled, military strikes hit 3 Iranian nuclear sites. At the same time, Iran was imploding from within. The currency collapsed, food prices skyrocketed, and massive protests demanding systemic change swept the nation. The US government publicly cheered on these movements. In response, the Iranian government launched brutal crackdowns, with mass arrests and sweeping internet blackouts that drew international condemnation. Amidst this instability, the US began a major military buildup in the region. A last-ditch diplomatic effort in Geneva failed on Thursday, February 26th. And that brings us to Saturday, February 28th. It's around 9:40 a.m. in Tehran. The target is a massive government compound that houses the offices of the Iranian presidency, the National Security Council, and the Supreme Leader himself. For months, intelligence agencies had been meticulously mapping leadership movements and communication patterns. The strike was originally planned for nighttime, but the intelligence window opened up, forcing an immediate daytime attack. The impact was devastating. The strike on the compound resulted in the sudden deaths of 30 senior Iranian officials, among them Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, the head of the National Defense Council, and the Defense Minister. President Pezeshkian survived. The Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council immediately vowed that Iran would respond, but the strike on the compound was just the beginning. It was part of a much larger operation, codenamed Roaring Lion by Israel and Epic Fury by the US. Following that initial strike, around 200 fighter jets poured into Iranian airspace. Their mission, to systematically dismantle the country's air defenses and missile stockpiles. 30 minutes later, the US military formally joined the fight. According to the New York Times, American naval vessels launched cruise missiles, targeting eastern Iran and the Iranian fleet. Across the country, military infrastructure was severely degraded. Both the US and Israeli leaders released public statements outlining the operation's goals, but amidst these tactical military operations, a tragedy occurred. Reports began to surface of an airstrike hitting an elementary school in the Hormuz province, leading to a significant loss of civilian life. While these numbers have not been independently confirmed, the New York Times noted that the school is located right next to an Iranian naval base. The US Central Command quickly announced an official investigation into the strike. The news of civilian casualties ignited international outrage and drastically accelerated the timeline for retaliation. Iran's response was swift and furious, Tehran launched Operation True Promise 4, plunging the entire region into a massive aerial conflict. Over 200 projectiles were fired toward Israel. In Yemen, Houthi forces ended a months-long ceasefire and resumed their aggressive attacks on shipping lanes in the Red Sea. The conflict spiraled outward with terrifying speed. UAE airspace was effectively shut down after a drone struck infrastructure at Dubai International Airport. Debris from intercepted projectiles rained down, damaging several commercial and hotel properties in the area. In Bahrain, the headquarters of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet was targeted. Qatar reported dozens of ballistic missiles entering its airspace, with falling debris causing injuries on the ground. Air defense systems in Saudi Arabia and Jordan worked frantically to intercept projectiles aimed at military installations. In Kuwait, passenger terminals at the airport were hit. The Arab League issued a strong condemnation of the escalating violence, while NATO commands across Europe were placed on high alert. Zooming out, the international reaction has been intense and divided. The U.S. administration defended the operation as a necessary act of a preemptive measure to eliminate imminent threats in what they called a war of necessity. However, critics are pushing back hard. They argue that intelligence suggested Iran was still years away from having a viable nuclear weapon, and its missiles didn't even have the range to pose a direct threat to the U.S. mainland. Many observers believe Iran was targeted primarily because of its internal instability, classifying the event not as a war of necessity, but a war of choice. These kinds of preventive military actions are heavily scrutinized under international law, with critics warning they violate national sovereignty and risk plunging the world into endless conflict. Furthermore, this military action was launched without congressional approval, sparking a major political firestorm back home in the United States. Protests have erupted in cities around the world, condemning both the actions of the Iranian regime and the American military intervention. The economic impact has been immediate. Oil prices have surged, and experts are now warning of a looming global energy crisis as transit through the vital Strait of Hormuz is disrupted. Inside Iran, the public response is deeply fractured. Citizens are expressing a complex mix of profound grief, anger, and renewed calls for systemic change. A provisional government has already formed, with its primary focus set on retaliation. The human cost of this conflict has been severe, with both military personnel and civilians suffering across multiple nations in the Middle East. The situation remains incredibly volatile. The entire world is watching, holding its breath, as the region braces for what comes next. Thanks for watching. The situation is developing rapidly, so make sure to subscribe for the latest updates. Stay safe.